Hey, welcome back to the Soul Pod. This is Stacy. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching my channel, for commenting, for being really part of this community. And for that matter, thank you to everyone who's been listening to the Soul Podcast as well. It seems like the numbers just keep going up, both on this channel and on the Soul Podcast. So if you are watching and listening, thank you for that. Today, I want to talk about the spiritual emergence, the great spiritual emergence we're in the current state of, this thing that we're going through. We hear a lot of people talking about it. There's plenty of people that are writing about it, speaking about it. We've heard it called many different things: the Great Awakening, the spiritual emergence, the Age of Aquarius. There's probably a dozen different ways to say it, depending on what sort of perspective you come at it from. But it seems like there's definitely something going on, and there's a lot of symptoms that it's happening. Not long ago, I was in Eastern Washington visiting my brother, and I noticed something interesting. That was one of these signs I'm talking about. There was a church that had closed and reopened as a dispensary. That's a shift. That's a serious shift. In that same space, there was also a building that was once a military recruiting depot, an army recruiting office that had now become a dispensary as well. Now, I'm not advocating for weed over war or religion, but it's an interesting thing to recognize. So I'd say maybe weed over war would be a good trade. At any rate, it is one of these symptoms that we're seeing, but there are bigger symptoms too. Early in 2024, the New York Times covered a story about a white buffalo calf that was born in Yellowstone Valley. This is significant because the white buffalo calf fulfills a prophecy of the Lakota people. The Lakota chief there said that the buffalo calf is a sign that we are entering a spiritual change on the earth. And in fact, they've been waiting for this prophecy, for this sign to arise. He says that not only are we entering into a spiritual awakening, we must enter into a spiritual awakening, or bad things will happen. We're not quite exactly sure what that means, but he believes that the world has to change if we're going to evolve. Why is this story interesting? It's interesting to me because it's the New York Times talking about something as deeply spiritual as a Lakota prophecy. And the Lakota people say this prophecy goes back way before time, before history, before they don't even know how far back this thing goes. It is a very ancient prophecy, and they've been waiting for this calf to be born. Now, spiritual things are being discussed in the most bizarre places, things like the use of ayahuasca, meditation, mindfulness, all these different things along the spiritual realm. There's conversations about that are being covered in places like the New York Times, like PBS, Vox, National Geographic, Psychology Today. I mean, some very mainstream places, even some traditional news channels are talking about topics like these. Really interesting things: psychedelic medications or psychedelic formulas being used to treat PTSD and for spiritual enlightenment and growth. These things are being talked about openly on places they would have never been talked about even 20 years ago. So what the heck is going on? And what exactly is it that triggers a spiritual awakening? When many of us go through spiritual awakening, a large portion of us, then this whole spiritual awakening around the planet starts happening. More and more people are waking up, are becoming more self-aware, are caring more about things like the environment, about eating right, about taking care of their bodies, about taking care of the planet, about other people, about dropping ego and embracing the core self, the soul, the spirit. But how do these things happen? They happen through a process of things breaking apart. Most spiritual awakening happens at the point of stress. Something horrible happens in our lives, a divorce, death, some other shifting thing that occurs that shakes the foundations of who we are and makes us reevaluate how we feel about life, how we feel about our existence, and what all this really means to us as an individual. And a lot of people have been going through things like that. I went through those sorts of things to wake up to my spiritual emergence. I didn't know that's what I was going through. I just thought I was having a really, really difficult time. And I was. But all those things led me to here, to talking to you, to living this existence, to ego death and spiritual emergence. But what's happening now is this. You may have noticed the world is wild right now. For the last 5 years, this wild thing is going on, like, what happened in 2019 that lasted for a couple of years. And all the insane stuff going on around the political systems in the world. Every single country has some bizarre political stuff going on. Ours is certainly no exception here in the United States. But what's happening with all these things that are happening is that I talk about points of stress. Typically, it's points of stress in our personal life that make these things happen. A death, a divorce, or whatever, change of jobs, whatever. But right now, the point of stress is the entire world. The entire world is creating a point of stress. And so we're all forced on at least some small level to reevaluate what all this means, our existence, what matters to us, what we value, what we want to do with this existence, with this life. And many people are finding that what they want to do with this life is they want to make a difference. They want to do a greater good. They want to leave the world a better place than they found it. They want to be more self-aware, more mindful, and they want to find balance. And they want to find the right vibration to live their life by. And that's where the spiritual emergence starts to happen. And it is happening. It's happening all around us. The author Marianne Williamson said a great spiritual awakening is occurring on the planet, and it's happening because more and more of us are awakening to the truth of who we really are. And I think what she means by who we really are is we're understanding now. We're starting to really get that we're not this body. We are the spirit. We are the spirit that we have always been from the day we were born. And before we had all this nonsense poured on us to tell us who we're supposed to be or who we are expected to be. All the conditioning that society, parents, and everything have put upon us. That's every human existence. But the spiritual awakening is happening. You're in the middle of it. Are you feeling it? Have you felt some of the symptoms of it? Have you seen signs of it yourself? Leave me some notes. Other things that you may have noticed that are interesting aha things, like a recruiting depot turning to a head shop. Wild. A white buffalo being reported on in the New York Times. These are crazy times we're living in. So let me read for you some of the signs of a spiritual emergence that's happening. Increased interest in meditation and mindfulness. That's one good symptom. Massive growth in the popularity of spiritual literature and media. There are entire channels now, like Gaia, that are paid channels people are paying that are entirely spiritual content, entirely spiritual. Growing acceptance of alternative healing practices, a decline in organized religion, and a rise in spiritual exploration. Global movements for peace and unity. We're seeing this now, which is pretty wild. Interest in ancient wisdom and indigenous practices like ayahuasca, psilocybin practices. Scientific research on consciousness and spirituality. Scientific research. I mean, universities spending tens of thousands of dollars, if not more, to try to answer questions like, what is this thing that we call near-death experience? There's also a massive emphasis on personal growth and self-actualization, as well as mindful consumption and ethical living. We think more about the way our fruits and vegetables, our food is produced, or how meats are produced. We think about what we're putting in our bodies. Even though we understand we're not just the body, we understand that we're sending a message to the soul by what we put in the bodies. There's a massive shift happening. Do you feel it? We'll talk more about this as we're moving forward, and we'll ask questions like, what exactly is spiritual awakening? And you might wonder, if you're not feeling it yet, how do you go about making the shift? Because, as I said, just a little stress is all it takes, and the world is supplying plenty of stress for that. Come back for the next video, and we'll talk more about this thing we call the spiritual revolution. If you haven't listened yet, tune into the Soul Podcast. You can find that anywhere you listen to podcasts. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it.